Hi, I'm Jim, and this is Jim's Fix-It Shop. And I just got back with the tire from the tire store. I went there to pick it up, and the guy handed it to me, and he says, "Here you go." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, I got to pay you for it." No, he says, "We just kept your old tube because it's fine. We put a new tube in it, and no charge." That's why I like dealing with a hometown business. These guys been around here for probably 3 generations, family owned, and once you get to know somebody and you go there all the time, they give you a few perks. So let's get the tire on. I got the dust cap here. It's got the felt seal and 2 washers inside. I'll try to get that on without getting them out of place. Rotate it until it goes over them bumps and locks in place. Then we put the tire on. 1 more washer. Got to put the cotter key through here. Now these are fairly large cotter keys. So when you bend the ends, you just don't want to flare them out. You want to wrap them all the way around the shaft so the hubcap will go on. Now if the cotter key is sticking out too far, I don't know if you can notice that or not, but the cotter key does not move. So when the hubcap is on here, a hubcap is going to spin with the tire, and the cotter key is going to cut a hole through your hubcap. So you got to make sure them are in all the way. I push them in this way as far as they want to go, and then we bend them down. And we'll bend the other one up. Then you want to get a hold of them with a pair of channel locks and really wrap them around the axle. And now we'll do the top side. These are really stiff. I don't know why they put such a big cotter key in here. I don't really know if you can see that, and I got the camera tipped up quite a ways for the next part of this job. But the hubcap goes on. The valve stem is still accessible to get some air in it if you need to. And that's done. Now the next part, get you over here, we're going to try to put some wires in this thing. I have 1, 2, and the 3rd harness is coming out of the tube from the ignition switch. So I guess the first thing we want to put in here, let's see where I want to hang this thing. Well, it's going to be in my way. I want to put that up a minute. Hang on. Okay, I had to run over and get my electric drill, or I should say my cordless drill, and a tap. Because I had a hole in here tapped down a little low for the brain to hang on, or I even do it, here it is. I'd rather keep it up a little higher and keep it away from the solenoid. Now you're not going to be able to see a thing that I'm doing in this little bitty box, so I'm going to explain everything to you. This is the starting solenoid. This is what actually cranks over your starter. And it sends a signal from your ignition switch to click this. This is just a switch, but it's a very heavy duty switch because of all the amperage that starter is going to be sucking out of your battery. So you have to use one of these. Unless you have the real old style machine with the push button. And that was an extremely heavy duty push switch. And they didn't last long. Most people that have them have been switching over to the solenoids. Now this solenoid only has one tab on it for a wire. Some have two. If the one you buy has two tabs, it doesn't matter which one you hook your power wire to and which one you hook your ground wire to. This one does not need a ground wire because it's grounded internally through this bracket. So all you need is a hot wire going to this lug, and that's what we have in this system. Now we're gonna take, this is a wire that goes up to your ignition switch. And that will hook up a little later. This is the wire we're going to shove through and over the pipe for the battery. This is the hot wire for the battery. And this one goes back to the starter. My engine's not on yet. We'll go over that when I get the engine fixed. And this is the wire that plugs into the stator that charges the battery. That's why you can see that's the white wire. The white wire is coming out of this shielding and going to the hot side of the stator. The hot side can be either one, doesn't matter. It's whatever one you want to put your positive battery cable on. That way when the current comes through this wire, it can go through this one and charge the battery. This is a fuse. Almost all the snappers have them. So we're going to stick this in here. This comes out this hole in the back and goes around the engine to the starter. This wire we're going to throw over top that pipe into the battery compartment. And I've got a couple screws here. That will hold the solenoid in place. There's not much room for your hands, let alone a camera. I'm hoping I can get this started. There's one. That went pretty good. Now, if we can, if we can even swing the ratchet in there, we'll be lucky. Wonder if they could have made them screws a little bit longer. Now, I have wiring diagrams I can send you if you're going to switch your machine over. It's really pretty simple. Now, this wire will go back to the starter and the... Get that wire back there. Come on. Now, a lot of these wires I protect with this plastic stuff. It's called split poly loom. Where they came up with that name, I have no idea, but I get it from my Napa store. It comes in, I don't know how long it is. It doesn't really say. It says the diameter. Don't say how long it is. It's all one piece. I thought I had a piece laying out here for this. Guess not. Oh, and this is my negative battery cable. That will be bolted to the frame of the machine on the other side. We'll leave that up there for now. I don't know what I did with that little piece. Now our brain for our safety system. These two wires here plug into the wire that is still on the mower deck. That tells the brain that, hey, the deck's in gear, we're not going to start. And let's see, this one is the ground wire that goes on the bolt for the engine, which this one coming out from your ignition switch goes on that same bolt. So we're gonna wiggle these through here. This plug here, it's a 4-wire, some are 2. This goes on the switch on the yoke. And this one is a 2-wire. This goes on the seat switch. Let me raise this up a little. Maybe you can see a little better. I don't know. Well, we're going to stick this in here. I stuck a bolt through the case and threaded it in so it shouldn't move on me. That's good and tight. When I put the nut on to hold this brain in position. And that should be the same, and it's not. Awful large headed screw for a 1/4-20. But it does have a washer built into it with a rubber seal. I grabbed that thinking, no, that wouldn't put so much pressure on that plastic part. Now, this one for the seat comes up through a hole under here and up through the big hole where the seat goes. It'll stay there, probably not. These are the little Christmas trees I talked about. They're only meant for one-time use. That's what holds on your covers over your electrical compartment, I guess, and the cover for the battery, which are a pain to get off. I tapped mine. You can see right here I've got one of the large-headed screws I talk about. And it's very easy to tap that hole, even though it's square. Just a little tip. Do not use a 4-flute 1/4-20 tap, because that's a 4-sided hole. The tap will just get locked in there and probably snap off when you try to turn it. 2-flute or 3-flute works perfect. All mine are 2-flutes. So this we're going to stick down through this hole in the back where all the rest of them are coming out. Kind of hard to get that big plug through there with this other wire already in the way. And this wire comes out that same hole. Now these are all inside this loom material, they call it. There we go. Now this one for the yoke goes down through this large hole in the deck and plugs into the yoke, which I'll probably do when we put the cable in, the clutch and brake cable. That's easier to see if the machine is standing up, to explain to you how to adjust it and where it goes. Then on this same wire, it has a very large eyelet we're going to stick this bolt through there, and this other ground wire coming from the ignition switch, we'll stick that on there, and we'll just stick that bolt in the hole where it goes if we're going to bolt the engine down. Let me see if I can spin you around a little bit. I'm sorry, you just can't see much of anything. There's the grounds. This wire plugs into the ground wire that's going back to this is a harness that goes back to the carburetor solenoid. So this is sending power back, and the other one is a ground wire. It's in the same harness that goes up into the coil that shorts it out and kills the engine when you turn the key off. So this one will go down around and go back to the engine. Oh, this one has to go through this hole. Where'd it go? This is the hot wire that comes from the ignition switch, and this will plug into the lug on the solenoid. I can't even get my hands in there, let alone a camera. There we go. I got numbers on these so I could remember where they went when I took them off. This goes up front to the ignition switch. This is the red wire that comes out of your tube. I'm going to stick this in here. And we're going to plug this into the wire coming off of the battery side of the solenoid. And if you pop this thing open, you can see that it has a fuse inside. It's the old style. Now some of the newer machines will take the newer flat square, I guess you could call them, and they'll have a different little box with a cover that snaps on it that holds that fuse. That's about it for the wires. There's really not that much to it. I might unplug this and put it under here. A lot of these I would like to put in some of this loom material. I guess when I get them hooked up permanently, I will do that, because if anything, these wires are rubbing on the side of this hole. It's just a, well, it's not really sharp, but it is a metal edge. Vibrations will end up cutting that wire, or at least through the insulation and popping your fuse. Now, I had one guy get a hold of me and he says that my machine won't start. It does nothing. I've checked everything. And I told him to pull the wire completely out of your tube. I says, unhook it back here, pull it out of the tube so you can inspect the whole thing. And he said, sure enough, I found the problem. Through that same tube, your cable runs through for your brake and clutch. And he said from using the clutch pedal or brake pedal, the cable from sliding back and forth cut that wire in half. So the engine, everything quit. So there's a lot of little places you want to look. Another problem place that I have found, maybe I can get you over here. I can't tell what you're looking at, is the back of this tube right here. That's a pretty sharp edge. And from this thing just sitting there vibrating when it's running, I've had machines where it has cut through the wire and shorted stuff out. That's why the part coming out of the engine will have this, or out of that tube will have this heavy black shielding on it. If you have just plain wires coming out of the back of that pipe, buy some of this stuff, snap it around the wires, and this is big enough where it will slide over what's already there and shove it up in that tube about 2 foot. It'll save you a lot of grief. So that's about it. As far as the ground wire, if yours is long enough, I think this one is. Yeah, that's plenty long. I would put that, I don't know what end of this is big enough. Looks like this end might be. Oh yeah, large hole. I would put that, let me set you here. We're going to put this ground wire, yeah, that'll reach, underneath the same engine bolt that these other ground wires are hooked to. Now that bolt does not go in that way. That bolt comes up from the bottom. And to keep that bolt in place so you can set the engine down, I don't know, I have some right here. You can buy these at any good hardware store. This one's kind of messed up from taking it off. They are not meant to be reused. This one's brand new. I don't know if you can see the teeth sticking up from that. You put your bolt in, you hold it from the bottom, and you press this down on there. What I use to press that on there with is a about a 1/2 inch or a 9/16 deep socket. And you just stick the bolt in, start the little washer on, put the socket on there and shove it down. That keeps the bolts from falling out when you set your engine down, and it keeps you from having to try to get your arm under here to hold the bolts in place. Some machines I've worked on, the factory installed these bolts and welded them so they won't move and they won't turn on you. Sometimes you got to get in here with a wrench to lock them down because the bolt will turn. And that's the wiring system. There ain't much to it. It's really pretty simple. If you have any questions, email me. I will walk you through it. It really is pretty simple. We'll stick that in there and keep that up. And I might, I think I'll wait until I get it all hooked up. Then I'm going to cover all the wires with this stuff. And the joints where it overlaps, or maybe I have to pop out through the side like I did here. I've got this bigger piece of loom. Whoops, too much stuff in the way. I got this bigger piece of loom here coming out from the coil area, or the starting solenoid. And then I put a smaller piece on. I have wires going both directions down that smaller piece. I'll wrap that up with tape and seal it up just to keep dirt out, if nothing else. I don't use my machines out when it's raining or snowing, so I don't have to worry about sealing it tight enough to keep water out of it. I don't care where I'm working or what I'm doing. if it starts raining, I'm done. Unless I'm not using any of my power tools or any of my machines. Shovel and a rake's one thing. I don't run my equipment outside. So that's it for this. Once I get the engine on, I can do a little bit more finishing up the wiring. But first I got to get this so I can get it off my table. Tomorrow I'm going to finish cleaning up the parts from Paul and figure out what he needs for parts and get them ordered. I didn't get around to getting over to my Napa store today because his machine did not have cork gaskets on it. It had paper gaskets. Now while the parts were getting cleaned, I didn't check the length of the sprocket. I can never remember what that's called. Sprocket and shaft. Does each one of them on the, I got one here. Here's a few I got here. Each one of these has a certain distance. My fingers are too fat to show you what I'm trying to measure. Each one will have a certain distance from here to here on this shoulder. That's what bumps up against the inner race of the ball bearings in the bottom of your yoke, bottom of your chain case. And if I put a thicker gasket between them two covers, it's going to make this shoulder too short, and this is going to float in there. You don't really want that. When I get his back, I'll check the distance on his and on one of these that uses cork gaskets, and I'll see if there's really a difference or not. I doubt I'll be able to buy paper gaskets. Them are, I imagine them are shot, gone. If I have to use that, I'll go to my True Value hardware store or my Napa store. Well, I might have enough here. Here is a sheet of paper gasket material. You can see I made a gasket for my carburetor. And you just make a pattern and cut them out. I've got a punch that punches the holes. X-Acto knife to do the outside. You can lay the cover right on it and just run your knife around the outside. To do the inside, I keep them weighted down because when you buy them, they're in a roll. It's really hard to work on them when they're like a big spring. So I keep them up there with some boxes on them and keep them flat. But to get the right width after you cut out the outside of it, I'll use a standard chain case cork gasket and draw around the inside of that. This chain case does not have the same bolt pattern that the new ones do. It has less bolts. So I doubt a cork gasket would even fit anyway. We'll find that out when we get to that point. So that's about it from now. I got this together good enough where I can get it down on its tires. Take that block out of there. And now it's sitting on its tires. Woo. I'm getting closer. Maybe when spring cleanup time comes, this thing will be up for sale. So I guess till next time, work safe, have fun, and I'll talk to you soon. So long.